It's getting hot in here!
What's up, guys? We're starting our second card review today, which is going to cover the cards from March 19th up until March 24th. This is where we left off from our previous card review. So, yeah, we're going to hop right into it, tell you what I think about it. If we want to recap a bit, I guess, from last time, I was talking about how the main theme seems to be the quests, and they're introducing a lot of synergy cards to go with the quests. We're also starting to see now some more powerful neutral cards, which are going to be interesting to look at. But I'm keeping an eye on the quest as something that you're going to expect to see played in most circumstances in your games in Ungaro, just because of the way they're designed and the amount of synergy cards they're coming with. So with that in mind, let's head into the first cards, and we're just going to go in reveal order, so we're going to hit them as they come. First one we're looking at is Crystalline Oracle, which is a 1-mana priest elemental. Copy a card from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand as a death rattle. These cards are very powerful in most scenarios where you get a 1-mana card that draws a card. The idea of priests stealing cards from their opponent seems pretty consistent with this, and the fact that it's a death rattle also synergizes with the priest quest. So again, we're looking at the quest as something that Blizzard is introducing a lot of cards to include to complete your quest from the Ungaro set, not just the classic cards, but plenty of new tricks will be at your disposal. I think this is a no-brainer to play. We don't even see all the elemental synergy yet, but it's probably helping out somehow in there. It seems good, and just the other classes that get these 1-mana cards are also pretty effective. In this case, the card is getting it from your opponent's deck, so you know it's higher quality than a random class card, for example, from Swashbuckler. Because if your opponent chose to play it, it is a good card, at least to them. In many cases, this should be a good card to you as well. I think Priest gets another advantage with that, where because they have other cards that steal, even if it's a card that wasn't necessarily useful on the surface, you might find the synergy just with all the other mechanics you have at your disposal as a Priest. Next up is Sunkeeper Tarim. This is a 6-mana paladin card. It's a 3/7 with taunt. Set all other minions' attack and health to 3. I mean, I think in general this card's going to be pretty good. It is able to immediately trade with 2 minions that you're using, so your opponent has to do something extra, like a spell, to deal with this. It has a lot of health for 6 mana. It has the same health as a Boulder Fist Ogre, it just has less attack. If this is for a slower style of play, but I think that you could easily include this in your Paladin decks. If you were to play this card right now, it'd be pretty amazing. You would just play it on turn 6 every time. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't play it because of how well it's statted compared to what it does to the opponent's minions. You can also use it to buff your own minions if you have a bunch of 1/1s around as a paladin. I think Stand Against Darkness is a great example of this. On turn 5 you Stand Against Darkness, which summons 5 1/1s, and then on turn 6 you can play Sunkeeper Tarim and destroy your opponent's minions, at the same time buff your minions to be very strong. Seems good to me. I feel like we say that about a lot of these cards. Ungaro is increasing a lot of power out of the cards, things that are just above what normal cards can do. We're seeing stronger and stronger effects. So very often I'm saying with these cards, it's good, you could play it, but you have to take that in the whole of what are the other cards they're releasing like. If they're all good, we're just going to have to wait and see. Shadow Visions, 2 mana, discover a copy of a spell in your deck. I think this is a little less good. Some people were very excited about this from the other pro players, but to me this card is too expensive. We're looking at a lot of strong minions and strong things that you can play on the board rather than strong spells. At least we haven't really gotten any cool spells so far that really stand out as much as the minions are scaling up. So to invest 2 mana just to get the spell. On the other hand, it provides some flexibility for Priest. Priest often lacks having that flexibility. And if you're not playing many spells, you could consistently get one that's important to you. But I don't think this is necessarily very good. Next up is Clutch Mother Zavis. I reviewed this one on stream as well. I mean, this is just going with that quest theme. We had already thought the quests are looking pretty strong with them giving the 4-mana cards to Priest and Warlock to complete their quest. But not only that, they're going further. If that synergy wasn't enough, they're going to pump more into it, and we get a huge discard advantage card. This card is just the perfect thing to discard. It gives you a return card, so it makes your completing quest easier. It's not only returning, but it's getting buffed. Absolutely insane high roll potential. It seems like the Warlock quest was already looking good. This can only make it better. I think that this card has every reason to be played in that style of deck, so you would always include it. Easy inclusion. The Warlock quest is looking so strong too. It's going to be pretty sweet. Next up, Shaman cards, Stone Sentinel. So this does curve out perfectly from Fire Elemental, which I think is the main thing to consider. But if you don't play an Elemental in the previous turn, it's only a 7 mana 4/4. And so I have to rate this card pretty low. Although you can curve out with it, it's not so amazing. It had reasonable stats, but not game-breakingly good. Your opponent could deal with it, or it's pretty AoEable as well. And you had to proc its effect every time, because otherwise there's no point in even playing it. So, can't say I'm too impressed with this card. I think that the Shaman also has a lot of other strategies that are effective right now, and switching to this strategy doesn't seem very appealing because of that. Ozruk. To go alongside that, more Elemental synergy. This one's neutral. I mean, maybe you'd play the Elemental Shaman and you get up to Ozruk and you slam them, but one of the big things that I've seen from the Elementals is they don't have big stats. They're more medium or small minions. So if you're facing an opponent, they've likely never had to use their big removal yet, and you play your Ozruk and suddenly it gets polymorphed. At most, I could see it being a 5/15. It would probably be worth 9 mana. A 5/10 is not worth 9 mana, so if you only played one Elemental, you can't even really justify playing this. I think that that's a rather unimpressive card, especially considering some of the other, on-curve strategies like we see from the discard Warlock, or also from the Mage that some of the cards we'll look at today, that you're doing so much aggressive, or not even aggressive, but in the early game, safe developments, stats, or card draw that give you strong bodies, that getting to those 9 mana stages, you already have to be doing pretty well in the game. Then we have a unimpressive looking 1 mana card, Firefly. Add a 1/2 elemental to your hand, basically add itself to your hand, although the second one will not summon the another elemental. It won't have the same battle cry. The Firefly doesn't look too impressive right away, but I think it's actually very strong. You can play this as a 2-drop as well as a 1-drop, and there's a number of things we've seen so far that are requiring you to play early game 1-drops or things in multiple that this will synergize well with, which we're going to look at eventually. Just think about the Firefly as we continue on to, say, the Hunter or the Rogue quest. Then we get Flame Geyser. Mage spell, deal 2 damage, add a 1/2 elemental to your hand. I think this is much worse than Firefly. You're getting the 1/2 elemental for an undercosted or an understated effect. You're only dealing 2 damage for 2 mana, which it should be 3 damage. 2 damage doesn't kill that much stuff. It's not getting a great thing, but maybe there's some elemental synergy there. Don't think this is really standing out as something that I would want to play as a mage. Then on March 21st, we get a look at our Shaman stuff, as well as some assorted murlocs. The first one being Primal Fin Lookout. 3 mana, 3/2, battle cry. If you control another murloc, discover a murloc. So this means you have to have a murloc on board when you play it. The big thing to me right now is the murloc random cards are not good. There's a lot of bad murlocs in random murlocs, but there's not that many murlocs. So if in this expansion they release a lot of, even maybe 5 other really good murlocs, then you could easily play this and get a strong murloc discover option each time, because you get a choice of the 3 of them. You could probably skip the bad one and get the good one, which means we have to judge this and some of the other murlocs that we're going to see, such as the Shaman quest, Unite the Murlocs, and Megafin. The Shaman quest is just about the same to judge as the other murlocs for the thought of discovery. If there are some stronger murlocs that we add, summoning 10 murlocs doesn't sound too hard. You can also use the 4 mana Call in the Finishers to summon 4 murlocs, so that could be very effective as well. The reward for the quest is the biggest thing. Megafin. 5 mana 8/8. We've seen 5 mana 8/8s from a number of the other quests now. Priests also get it, and Hunters will get one. Fill your hand with random murlocs. The same thought for the Discover, that if they add more powerful murlocs that are filling the random pool, then this could be more appealing. But with this, it's less appealing than Discover, because you're filling your hand, and that means you're already automatically overdrawing your next card. If you didn't have mana left to play after, I suppose. And you're getting random murlocs, so no matter what, you're going to get some shitty murlocs in there. You're going to get some murlocs that are the 2/1s for 1 mana, or the 2/1 summon a 1/1 for 2 mana. Not the things that you need to get really aggressive on the board, given your opponent's playing overstated minions. To me, this looks like one of the weaker quests, but I wouldn't be surprised if you could play it. Shamans do have Bloodlust, a card I always enjoy, which rewards having a big board, and the Murlocs seem like they could play to that big board strategy, so that would probably be my go-to to how to use that. The Shaman seems to be getting two themes, though. They're getting the Murloc theme with the quest, and they're getting the elementals with the other cards they've given them. They've given Shaman a lot of elementals at this point, in fact. So what do you actually end up playing? Shaman has Jade too, and Jade's been really consistently good. It's tough to make a switch there into the other styles, but if we saw some better neutral Murlocs to come, then it could be more appealing. Yeah, and then back to the elemental theme, we get the Shaman Legendary, Kalimos the Primal Lord. 8 mana, 7/7, Battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, cast an elemental invocation. And I can remember the elemental invocations were deal 3 damage to all enemy minions, heal your hero for 12, deal 6 damage to enemy hero, and fill your board with 1/1 elementals. The big thing to me is the elementals seem like a curve-out deck where you're playing like one bigger elemental each time, and they don't seem like they're as overstated as the other minions we've been seeing. So it's hard for me to judge that this would be effective. If you didn't play an elemental last turn, once again, it's not very good. So you really need to hit that perfect curve, it feels, with the elementals. It makes me wary to put too much faith in them, because hitting that perfect curve doesn't require me as the player doing anything to get it. I just am hoping to draw the elementals. And they're rather slow minions at the size that they play. And then we have the Tol'vir Stone Shaper. This is not an elemental. In the case of most of the Shaman cards, the card is getting synergy and is also an elemental for the next card. This one is only rewarding you if you play an elemental, but it is a neutral card. If you played an elemental last turn, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So this is like a great arena pick, I think. A 3/5 body is pretty solid. You're missing about 1 attack from an ideal body. In Constructed, you're getting a slightly smaller Sunwalker for 4 mana. It sounds appealing at first, but I don't think it's really that good. You probably want higher attack by the time you're at 4 mana, because you can already play a lot of strong 3-attack minions at 3 mana. I'm not going to rate that too highly compared to the class cards they've been introducing. Then, beginning March 22nd, we have Hydrologist. It's a Paladin card, 2 mana, 2/2, Murloc, Discover Secret. So we've learned that this will discover a Paladin secret. I believe they have confirmed this for us. This will only discover Paladin secrets, and for that reason I have to say it's not very good. If they maybe gave us some other Murlocs I wanted, but yeah, I do not feel this is very good if it's getting a Paladin secret. If it was to get other class secrets, it'd be better. Paladin secrets are very low value in most cases though, so a bit of a disappointing card in that sense. Moving on, we get the Rogue Quest, The Caverns Below. Play 4 minions with the same name, reward Crystal Core. So this is a very complicated one. Crystal Core. For the rest of the game, your minions are 5/5. Obviously, you're playing smaller minions here, right? I don't know, this sounds kind of bonkers in some cases. You have to use specific synergy to play 4 minions with the same name, but 4 is not a high number. It seems like you could pull that off in a lot of cases, even by the time you're at turn 5. If your opponent was playing a slower game and you did this and you weren't like really behind, I think this is a very strong effect. Suddenly you have a lot of minions that were originally like 1/1s that are now 5/5s and can take over the board in a turn or two. The big thing to me is how hard it is to pull off the quest, and I think that's unclear. You need to pull off the quest while still like trying to use your early game to retain an advantage, and that's more difficult than just like shadow stepping the same guy and doing nothing with it, because then you have no cards left and completing the quest is kind of useless. But if you could build your deck properly, and this seems to reward an expert deck builder, which turns out the rest of the world will end up being a expert deck builder, because the rest of the world is a lot of good people out there. Someone's going to find a way to make this like do things, right? And it could be very, very powerful. It would definitely lend itself to a more aggressive strategy, I believe, because you would want to use lower cost cards and then turn those lower cost minions into big ones after the buff. Then we have the Rogue, draw a card, then add a copy of it to your hand. This is like Arcane Intellect, but obviously it helps with the quest, that's for sure, because you can get a second of the same thing, or just in general it's Arcane Intellect, which isn't a bad investment. It's not amazing, but you could like prep this out and just get 2 cards for free as well. I think that this is a pretty reasonable card. Something that you would want to play if you were trying to achieve the quest, but maybe not actually what you'd want to play, because it's not overvalued like many of the other cards we're seeing are. This is going to work well with the Hunter Quest. The Hunter Quest, we haven't seen it yet, is play 7 1-mana cards, so something to keep in mind. But I don't think that this actually works well with a Hunter Quest because you don't want to play a 3/5 on turn 5 if you're playing an aggressive strategy with a lot of 1-drops. It's hard for me to like this minion because it's really low attack value, and the 5 health is kind of useless when it has 3 attack, especially when you're a hunter and you want to smork things. There's got to be a better way to do the quest, but on the other side, Hunter doesn't have a lot of card draws, so it's a little bit of something. Maybe it gives you the gas you need to actually get the job done. On 1-drops, this is one of the only 1-drops we've seen thus far, and hopefully they stay away from too powerful effects for 1-drops, but this one looks pretty strong. This isn't a scaling 1-drop, which is a good thing, but it does allow you to do something very powerful, and it's an elemental too. Freeze an enemy for 1 mana. And now, before this, only mages really had access to freeze. There was a large minion, Frost Elemental, for 6 mana, 5/5 that frees an enemy. But for small stuff, a mage could do it with Ice Lance. They could Ice Lance for 1 mana and freeze an enemy. This is actually better than Ice Lance because it freezes and plays a 2/1 body. It's also an elemental, and it gives you freeze for other classes. I guess Shaman could also freeze. They had Frost Shock, deal 1 damage and freeze an enemy. This gives you freeze for all other classes, so suddenly a Warlock can freeze things, you know. A Zoo Warlock can freeze your Yeti from attacking that turn. And this is something that you could definitely make use of. Also makes just 1-drops a little more valuable if you're trying to get 1-drops in your deck, so easy, no-brainer, good 1-drop. And then on to today, March 24th, where they released a whole batch. Let's start at the bottom here. Curious Glimmer Root. Oh man, is this really a thing? So this is a 3-man 3/3, which is a pretty good body. Battlecry, look at 3 cards, guess which one started in your opponent's deck to get a copy of it. Okay, so this is a single player mechanic. This is, you are only deciding this without your opponent's input. The game is giving you a choice, and you need to be the better player and figure out which one it is. To me, I think I could do this pretty often, and I think this is a card where you need to look at it as it will always succeed, because a good player should be able to make it succeed, or like 90% of the time. So if we consider that this always succeeds, it's a 3-mana 3/3 that draws a card from your opponent's deck. That's really good. I think that this is very powerful. This also works well with the Priest early game. This is a value card that you can play as a good body to buff up with stuff because it has 3 attack. Yeah, you could definitely play this, and I'm a little scared for this card. Priest already has a lot of ways to steal things, like now their hand is just even more full of value stuff. And this is a game that I, as the opponent, cannot interact with at all. It's just pure, see if they can do it or not. Next up, we have Volcanosaur. 7 mana, 5/6. Battlecry, adapt, then adapt. I think this is a good arena card. It's a little unimpressive for 7 mana to play something like this in Constructed, but 2 adapts is pretty good, and a 5/6 body is already pretty good, so I wouldn't complain. This would be something you could pick up and think that it was a very clean addition in Arena, but in Constructed, it's unlikely to see any play just because it doesn't work with a specifically refined strategy. We're seeing very well-refined strategies out of the quests at the moment. Gluttonous Ooze. This is what we should have had in Mean Streets because they made the pirates a thing. Destroy your opponent's weapon and gain armor equal to its attack. 3 mana, 3/3. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. In this expansion in Mean Streets, we got Toxic Sewer Ooze. We got a 4/3 for 3 mana, so it had 1 more attack, and it removes 1 durability from your opponent's weapon. This, for 1 less attack, destroys your opponent's weapon completely, which is obviously worth it, because a lot of the time they have like 4 durability. And it gains you armor as well. This is the only neutral way to gain armor. It looks amazing, doesn't it? But the thing is, I don't think that we're actually going to use this. I think that in most cases, the pirates will not be such a big thing. We're going to be playing our quests, and that means there'll be 9 classes, and only some of those will use weapons, and even less of those weapons will be going face for you to need the armor. So, I don't know, I don't see why you would include this. You could just play a Tar Creeper instead, which would tank 2 hits from a weapon anyways. Unless the pirates are really still a thing, and they messed up their balance pretty hard. But given that we're seeing so many overstead minions at the moment, I do think we'll be completing the quests and going for those refined quest strategies. And so this will sit on the sideline as a remembrance to what we should have had in Mean Streets, that releasing a balanced weapon removal in the next expansion is completely useless because we don't need it now. You've made other cards now. We're probably going to need something else, but you know, it'd be nice if they adjusted it in the game instead. Because this would have been great if we just saw Toxic Sewer Ooze turn into Gluttonous Ooze in the middle of Mean Streets through the magic of a digital card game. Boy, that would have been pretty nice, wouldn't it? And now I don't think I'm going to play this. Although it is a nice body, I rate this card highly. I just don't think that the weapons will be going face as much. Next up, Mana Blind, and this one's a big one for me. It's improving the secret packets for Mage even more. For Mage, you already have a lot of really strong, kind of almost overpowered synergy cards with secrets. And they've given us also, previously, in the last card review we saw, Arcanologist, which is a 2/3 Mage card that draws a secret from your deck for 2 mana. So, secrets, a lot of the time, you have these really strong synergies, but you can't hold value in your hand because they're all playing early, and if you drew your secrets, then you know maybe they're just getting an early game minion. Suddenly your opponent is way ahead of you because you invested 2 cards in that. With a card like this, you're getting a value back from it. It's putting a card back into your hand, but it's giving you the secret synergy for all of those early secret minions to be more powerful. And I think if you take a look at the number of secret minions we have like a 6/6 that reduces its cost by 2 every time a secret gets played. We have Medivh's Valet, a 2-mana 2/3 that deals 3 damage when you have a secret in play. We have Kirin Mage, we have Cabal Lackey, we have Ethereal Arcanist. The choices are just huge for secrets as it is, but we didn't have value. And the Arcanologist and Mana Blind are adding value. We haven't even seen the Mage quest yet. Who knows if that's going to involve secrets? That would just be bonkers, because we can already seem to use secrets pretty well, I think. And secrets have another advantage of your opponent doesn't know what they are, right? Like when you play this, even if your opponent knows what it is, I think you're going to be pretty okay with it. But you could get some really big things off this. If you got a 0 mana lay on hands because they played it, then that'd be pretty good for you, huh? That seems like it might win the entire game. The way these can scale just feels like Secret Mage is going to be a big thing. While Mage is losing some of its Flamewaker damage options, I'm looking at the secrets as a huge curve-out game that you could beat down your opponent and have a big board advantage afterwards. That'll be a fun one. As a Mage player, I'm excited. I think that is very strong and works exactly in the way that you needed value from your secret synergy. Next up, we have a rogue card, Vile Spine Slayer. This is a 5-mana 3/4 combo destroy a minion. I think this is definitely playable. I don't think it's necessary in a rogue deck, but for what it is, it's a minion that also kills something. You need a combo for 5 mana. That's not terribly hard to do. You play like a 2-mana card, and on 7 you have a combo, or you play a backstab and you combo. Seems good. I think this is definitely something you could play if it was fitting in the meta, but if you're playing a rogue quest and you're trying to get your minions to turn into 5/5s, well, this isn't very impressive, right? If you're doing early game things with a bunch of 1-drops, you're probably not going to include this. For what it does, it's a good card. Will it see play? That's harder to say. Living Mana. Transform your mana crystals into 2/2, recover the mana when they die. So we've been told that they have Death Rattle when you summon them. I think this makes them much worse. You can only have so many minions on the board as well, right? Like at most you can summon 7 of these. I think that when you play the card on turn 5, it's actually pretty good. But after that, I'm not too convinced you would really want to play this. It's an average card. The other strategies at the moment look so much more refined than this. I have a hard time believing this would be too amazing. And we also have Mirage Caller, 3 mana, 2/3. Choose a friendly minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. This is like a Razorfen Hunter, and nobody plays Razorfen Hunter because it doesn't have great stats. It's acceptable stats. The big thing is if you had some specific synergy with the Mirage Caller, so I don't think this would be a regular inclusion, but if you want to build your deck around it, you could get something to happen, I'm sure. We on Corrupting Mist. It's a Warlock card. 2 mana, corrupt every minion, destroy them at the start of your next turn. To me, this is a good card. I think that this is something that pulls off a lot of value for a low mana cost, and you could easily include this because it also does the same job as the 1 mana corruption. In most cases, you're going to have a bit of extra mana when you're doing something like corruption. It's just because you need to deal with a big minion. This still deals with like one big minion, but it also deals with multiple, and it's much faster at doing that. You can play this, then play your own minions. You could play this and just kill like 2 big guys, and for 2 mana you still have your whole turn. Seems good. I would include this in my Control Warlock decks, and I think that a Control Warlock would love to play this. One thing is, Control Warlock really going to be that good? Because, you know, the Warlock quest is discarding your cards. This seems like something that will just get thrown away. But if you were controlling things, Corrupting Mist is a very strong play. Next up is a Paladin card, 1 mana spell, Lost in the Jungle. Summon 2 1/1 Silverhand Recruits. Yeah, you can definitely play this. This is exactly what Paladin likes to play, is summon a bunch of dudes. There's specific Silverhand synergy. It's a 1 mana card. You can just throw it in there and have some extra dudes. I think this does not synergize with hand buffs is important. If this was like a 1/1 that summoned a 1/1, it'd be better than a spell, because then the hand buffs would work. This is anti-hand buff. Still a good card though. You could play it. Molten Blade. 1 mana, 1/1. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a new weapon. A lot of the time I would view this as like a 3 mana 3/2. There's a lot of stuff that's 3 mana 3/2. Well, that's its approximate value to me. So that's slightly worse than a War Axe, but it's still a good weapon. And warriors have a bunch of things that are buffing weapons in their hand, and they're not playing any of these right now. So those would work very well with this. You would buff it and then it would transform, but the new weapon would also have a buff. And this lets you hold more weapons, so do things like that. You can still only attack with 1 weapon every turn though. Warrior's in a weird place right now as well. I'd like to see what their quest is going to be before I judge their cards too much. The way Warrior's playing at the moment is nothing like what we normally see from them, so maybe they'll shift to a different direction. Seems reasonable. I would play it. Finally, we have the Hunter quest. Marsh Queen. Play 7 1-cost minions. Reward Queen Carnissa. So if you have a deck of 29 1-mana minions, so all you draw is 1-mana minions, and you have this quest, you will complete this quest on turn 5. You will play the final 1-mana minion on turn 5 to complete this quest. That's assuming none of the cards in your hand drew 1-mana minions. We've seen stuff like the Firefly, which is drawing you an extra 1-drop. This is a perfect thing that you could say include with your Hunter quest. I have no doubt that they're going to increase the synergy for this as well from Hunter. We always have seen them so far release several synergy cards to go with the quests, and this looks like another case where that will happen, and they'll give Hunter a 1-mana card this expansion to make this easier to pull off. And that's just assuming you played 29 1-mana cards. I think in many cases you wouldn't do that, but you'd probably play something better than that then, right? This seems like a very aggressive quest, and Queen Carnissa herself is a 5-mana 8/8, as we've seen from many quests, and she shuffles 15 raptors into your deck. The raptors are all 3/2 beasts for 1 mana, so that's already pretty good, and they draw a card. So you can potentially just like raptor into more raptors, or raptor into 1-drop and then steady shot every turn after you play this. I think this quest is definitely something you could play. It's very aggressive. You still have to play the board, but I mean, you got the 5-mana 8/8 too. It's probably one of the quests you would complete earliest in the game. Something around turn 5 or 6 would be what you're looking to do every single game. Yeah, seems pretty strong. The one disadvantage is you don't actually get to play a 1-drop on turn 1, right? That kind of sucks. Your deck could be 29 1-drops, but you're still not going to play a 1-drop on turn 1 because you're going to play your quest. If you go second, you could quest and then coin 1-drop. It would feel a little strange, wouldn't it? But yeah, I think this is easily playable. You can hit people in the face pretty hard. It works well with the Hunter style. That's it for now. That's all the cards up until March 24th. That's 44 of the 135 revealed. And we'll probably do 2 or 3 more of these review videos. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave me a comment. I'll see you next time.